For Democrats, running in Indiana is not for the faint of heart, but that does not scare J.D. Ford. J.D. is running to lower healthcare costs and cost of living for Hoosiers. He's running for Congress in Indiana's 5th district, and unlike his competitor, he has not been booed at a town hall. The internet has deemed him the J.D. they do not hate. Welcome to Sorry I'm a Bitch, J.D.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. This is the Joyful Revolution series, so we're going to keep it fun.
Okay.
My first question is, you've served in the Indiana Senate since 2018 as an openly gay man. How has that shaped the way you navigate the space politically and personally?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. In 2018, when we took our seat, we made history in our state as the first LGBTQ person, and it was for me. So, I carry two burdens, right? It's an honor, and I love it, and it's something that I cherish every day. But also, I'm not a member of the rest of the LGBTQ spectrum, right? So I don't have the experience of trans. So on that front, it can be a little bit challenging, but still, nonetheless, fighting for our trans siblings and all members of the LGBTQ plus community. And if you ever visit me at the State House office, my door is covered in rainbows because people see what I'm trying to do. We just want to be respected, and not only that, but it serves two purposes. One, it's a reminder for me. People are seeing what I'm doing, so the work continues. But also, it is a little bit kind of a petty reason for me, is that when my colleagues have to come over and talk to me, they're just boom, met with the rainbow. But I do that because it's a reminder to them that they don't just represent white straight people. They represent the rainbow. Our society is the rainbow.
Yes.
And so that's why I try to do that.
Yeah. That's a form of joyful revolution there.
100%.
You want to talk to me?
Yeah. You got to step
Got to look at it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and I'm coming from a perspective of a new Hoosier. So for those of us who haven't been engaged with J.D. before, can you explain to us where you're from originally?
Yeah. So like you, I'm a Hoosier by choice. So I grew up in Northeast Ohio in a little town called Vienna. So I went to high school at Brookfield High School, went to school at the University of Akron. And my first job out of college was I joined a fraternity there. And my first job was to work for my fraternity, which is located in the northern part of the district. And I actually didn't know this, but there's actually like 20 to 22 different fraternity and sorority headquarters.
Oh, wow.
So they bring talent from all across the United States to Central Indiana. I think it has something to do with the tax purposes, but yeah. And went to school at Purdue Northwest to get my master's degree, and then came back to Central Indiana.
Sweet.
And just kind of put down the roots here. Ohio and Indiana is very similar in terms of Midwest values.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm kind of right in the middle of all that. And to get home, it only takes me about maybe 5 hours. So not too bad. Home.
Yeah. It's good to be close to the roots for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So you're running in the 5th district, and one of our big questions is why now?
Yeah, that is a good question. So, for me, I was kind of thinking about the idea, I've been serving in the state Senate for the past, 8 years. And so I feel like I've got the legislative experience. All throughout the fall, we saw the redistricting debate happen in our state. And, we saw, the Vice President, J.D. Vance, come out here twice. By the way, once was on a shutdown, so as people were trying to figure out their own budgets, he is flying on Air Force Two to come here to convince my colleagues to vote for this redistricting mess. Then they got invite to the Oval Office. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, had a phone call with them. So they really put the full court press on my colleagues. Yeah. I just, the final vote, when I said no to that whole debacle, I was like, take that, Donald Trump. Yeah. So I felt like I took him on and won, and made the front page of the New York Times on the Facebook page, and had my first national debut on MS Now. But it was really, for me, back to your question, Washington was all up in our business. Mm-hmm. And my colleagues kept saying, well, if well, we can do this because it's legal because Washington, D.C., the Congress hasn't acted. So in my mind, I was like, well, I got to go to D.C. to fix this. So that's part of the reason why I'm running. So.
Perfect. And I do need to add, thank you for being the better JD when
Yes.
you visit.
Yeah. Sorry to have you in that category.
Yeah.
I would like to say, that I'm the better looking JD. And,
for sure.
Absolutely. Although, someone recently called my office and was like, tell JD Vance. And I was like, oh no. Wrong JD. Maybe I should shave the beard or something. I don't know. So.
No, he can.
Yeah.
You own it. You got it.
Yeah.
We'll send him away.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, I want to pivot into some more, Indiana questions just to, feel you out.
Sure.
What is your favorite Devour spot?
Devour. I am always on a budget. So if we can get like a Devour spot with like some of the fancier restaurants, then I'm all for it.
We have St. Elmo,
but
St.
I mean, it's good. Ruth Chris is also
good. A little pricey, but
yes. Yeah.
Not as.
But yeah, I would say probably St. Elmo's or like Ruth Chris.
Yeah. I love it. All right. So we're going to do a segment called Say It With Your Chest.
Okay.
And I'm just going to ask you questions and first response, just say it with your chest, What's the Republican Party getting right now?
On the spot.
Okay, let's going back to the redistricting debate. They did get it right when they voted down the redistricting and when they tried to steal your vote and your voice. So I will say that.
Perfect. All right, we'll give it to him. We'll give it to him. Yeah.
But notice the pause there for a second.
I was honestly, when I wrote the question, I was like, I don't know what I'd say. So you're a better man than me. What are Democrats afraid of?
You know what? I think sometimes we're just afraid of just being ourselves, right? And so for me, there are people like, oh, well, he can't win, because the 5th Congressional District is rural Indiana and a gay man's not going to get elected out there. And what I would just simply say is that I'm going to be myself. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to explain to people, what I stand for, what I believe in, the America, the Indiana that I want to live in. And I'm just going to go out there, be myself, and I'm going to let the chips fall where they may. I'm going to work really hard. And I think that's one of the things, for me, just in the past 8 years in the state Senate, is that even my colleagues have recognized that I'm one of the hardest working members of the Senate. I have a competitive district, right? My state Senate district. It could easily flip back to Republicans. And we want our elected officials to be working for us. Yeah. So that means calling people back, emailing people back, being out and visible in the community. A lot of my colleagues don't do that, So for me, I think we just need to be unabashedly ourselves and explain what we stand for and what we believe in, the Indiana that we want to live in and the America that we want to live in.
Yeah. What does Indiana need to hear right now that they don't want to hear?
Yeah, I, in my farewell address to the state Senate a couple of weeks ago, I just talked about, that we need to support everybody. I mean, life for people right now is super hard. And, people are just trying to get by, pay their groceries, pay their mortgage or their rent. Because, I think a lot of people just think that we shouldn't include renters in the conversation, but, we need to, because, we tried so hard to pass, tenants' rights and things of that nature, but people are just trying to get by. And in my farewell address, I explained to that. I also explained to my colleagues that, you're always attacking the LGBTQ plus community, but do you know someone? Like, do you honestly know someone? Can you have a conversation with them? I think that people would be well served to do that.
What's one issue you'd risk your seat over?
One issue, for my state Senate seat or my congressional seat?
Your congressional seat, yeah.
Okay. I think the issue that I would say is that going back to what I was just saying about, being in the community and doing town halls and phone calls and emails, for me, I sometimes, will listen to, constituents when they call in, and I may personally disagree with that, but I'm not there to serve myself. I'm there to serve the people. And so for me, I might completely disagree with, the district, but I'm going to make sure that I listen to them, that I work for the people. And I think so many of my colleagues forget that. And so that's what I would say to that.
Yeah. You've been in this Indiana Senate since 2018. What's something about the State House that would genuinely shock people?
The thing that always shocks me is that when I first got there, I always thought, did they literally just say that into the microphone? Did they say that out loud for people to hear?
Yeah.
Because normally that would be like a backroom conversation.
Yeah.
But no, my colleagues, because we have a supermajority, which means, they don't even need the Democrats to do business in our state. They just are so brazen and so cocky that they just come out and they say these things. And you're like, you probably should have said that behind closed doors, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that would shock you. But I would also say on the flip side of that, even though I'm only one of 10 Senate Democrats in the state Senate, you can get things done with my colleagues. The Republican caucus in the state Senate is somewhat divided, and they are now realizing that, okay, if we get 16 of us and 10 of the Senate Democrats, then we can get something done and across the finish line. And so that is kind of forcing them to have to work with us and negotiate with us, which is really good, because I think that's when bad stuff happens, bad policy happens,
right,
is when it's not negotiated. They just come out and they just do it. So
yeah. What does Indiana's 5th district need that it's not getting right now?
Representation. 100%. The current occupant of that seat is not serving on any committees. And as a state legislator, I know that the bulk of the work that we do is in committees. We're working with our colleagues to get things right before it comes out of committee, because then when it advances to the floor, it's kind of like it could still be amended. But it's getting closer to the final version, right? But the committee process is something that's so important, and the fact that we don't have anybody serving us in that capacity, I think, is very shameful.
Yeah. I think she's like threatened to quit. I'm like, do it, babe.
Multiple times. It's like,
yeah.
Do you want the job? Do you not want the job?
Right. I'm like, you ran, right? Like no one forced you to do that.
And she signed up for another term, which is good because we're looking forward to challenging her.
Well, hell yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to play this or that.
Okay.
Fourth Day Ray Brewing or Sun King Brewing?
Sun King.
Okay, yeah.
Mainly because there's an amazing spot in Carmel's Uptown. There's also a really cute Sun King up in Kokomo in Howard County. So Sun King.
Yes.
I've got to ask, as a fan, do we have a favorite of orange cream, or we go the darker beers?
I would say like the cream ales.
Okay.
It's good for me. Yeah.
Good stuff.
But also kind of depending on the mood. Like maybe today, maybe a little darker because it's like cold and rainy today.
Yeah.
But maybe the cream stuff in the summertime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Persuading independence or energizing the base?
I have to pick because I would say both.
Yes.
Because, for me, it is about persuading the base, but I would not be a member of the General Assembly if it wasn't both, right? Because you have to make sure that our people get out there and vote. When I first ran for office in 2014, only 7% of Hoosiers voted.
Yes.
Which was not good. And then we see what we're currently dealing with, right? So I say, welcome to the party, Indiana. We need to, change the people. If we want to change policies in our state, then we've got to change the people of our General Assembly and change our congressional delegation.
Yes.
So it's got to be energizing the base, but also I love going to go door to door and talk to somebody, whether it be a Republican or an independent, when they don't, slam the door in my face, I'm okay with that. I actually prefer that because it's like, okay, well, you've already demonstrated to me that you're not capable of having a conversation with me, right? So I'm just going to move on and go talk to the next person. I would say both.
I love it. St. Elmo's Steakhouse Shrimp Cocktail or Yats Chili Cheese Etouffee?
Oh.
Hardest question of the day.
Yeah.
It is. Both are amazing. Although I will say that if you are like feeling some kind of sinus congestion, you got to go with the St. Elmo's. I actually tricked my dad because my dad, first time visiting out here, I was like, Dad, go ahead and get a big scoop of that, cocktail sauce. And so he did. He said that he felt like the pain in the back.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Oh
Yeah.
boy.
So yeah, I would say St. Elmo's.
I love looking around and just like watching people. I'm like,
Who's
the men,
who's the
especially because they
first-timers?
act like, act like,
That's not
And
me.
I don't know if it counts as hazing, but I feel like that's got to be like
Oh, yeah.
a Hoosier introduction. Like, welcome to the state.
have some of this shrimp cocktail sauce.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
And they sell it in bottles.
Yeah.
So I will bring it. My sister lives in Florida, so she will like, hey, can you like pick me up a bottle of that? And so I'll bring it down for like a Christmas gift. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
All right, so we will transition now.
Okay.
Bit of a heavy hitter. So this question was inspired by a friend of mine who lives in Chicago, and basically one of the parts of the LGBTQ community that gets often overlooked is trans
Yes.
people. So Indiana keeps coming for trans Hoosiers.
Yes.
How do you protect and uplift the community without sugarcoating the fact that their rights are under attack?
Yep. No, absolutely. Thank you for that question. And again, it's, an enormous privilege, to be the first member of our community, but also it's a lot of weight
Yeah.
on, being able to help speak for them. And again, going back to that, I want to acknowledge that I don't have that experience, right? But, just making sure that I use my voice to push back on the nonsense that we hear. It's all fear and scare tactics
Perfect.
that we hear from the other side,
Yeah.
And so recently I spoke at the BMV field hearing to say, hey, gender markers on a driver's license, if you don't want one, then don't get one, right? But don't stop other people from getting this.
Right.
And here's the thing. When you present your ID, so many times,
Yeah.
right? You're presenting it to a bar. You're presenting it to the bouncer at the bar. You're presenting it to the ticket agent. There's just so many times. And so, you don't want people to be like looking at the ID and like looking at you, because essentially you are now outing yourself.
Right.
So how many times are you going to do that, right? So just speaking up, we had some terrible legislation this past session to really harm the LGBTQ plus community, our trans siblings in particular. And so, to me, that's a good question because, there's just so much. And I'm also learning, this might be breaking news, I don't know, but Kansas recently, overnight,
Yeah.
basically just sent trans folks a letter that says you no longer have a driver's license.
Right.
What?
Invalidating it. Yeah.
And I'm hearing that potentially could happen here. And I don't want to cause mass panic or anything like that, but I would not be put it past our Attorney General, Todd Rokita, for doing something very similar. And I think when that happens, we need our cis friends to stand up and to say no more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's a perfect, point. And something we're curious of is, how do you deliver hard truth without draining hope?
My hope's a little drained.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, standing on the Senate floor, I'm looking at 49 other people, and I know some of those people, my colleagues, particularly my Democratic colleagues, are allies, so I don't tend to look at them, but I look at the rest of my colleagues, and I just try to talk about my truth, my experience. I try to give personal anecdotal stories about things that I've heard or seen in hopes that might change, some hearts and minds. But I also think when I'm doing that gives hope to our siblings in our LGBTQ plus community, that someone is there, someone is speaking up for us. And so that's what I would say to that.
Gotcha. Awesome. I think, and we talk about, especially if you're engaged in politics, it always feels like it's DEFCON 2. And I know,
Yes.
Especially in the LGBTQ community in a state like this, it feels like you're always under attack.
Yeah.
So as a person who has to project out and always kind of pull from yourself, how do you stay balanced in this sort of environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. Lots of wine.
Perfect.
I also love going to, different parks. I take Stella with me.
Perfect.
As we talked earlier, she's my three-legged tripod puppy. Not puppy, she's kind of an older dog, but, just going out with her, playing with the cat, friends, family. I like to, go swimming, play basketball. So I think for me, it's like, it's the old saying that you got to put your oxygen mask first before you can help others.
Right.
I learned that a long time ago. And yeah, I try to live my life by that. I don't get it right all the time. But yeah, you got to put it on first, because then if you are mentally and physically drained, then you can't help other people. And I tell people, it's okay to disconnect. It's okay to take a step back.
Yeah.
Get your batteries recharged, do what makes you happy, but also don't be away forever, because we need you in this fight. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
And so, that's a perfect question. So, how do you motivate people if they feel exhausted with all of this? And, this is an election year. The fight's literally just beginning.
Yes.
So how do you kind of motivate people and get them going?
Yeah, I feel like we're sprinting every single day, right? Just because of everything that's on the news. But don't forget, this is a marathon. So as I was just saying, like, take a step back, recharge up, and then come back, to the fight. I love doing the small things for people. I think the small things matter, like handwritten notes to people or personal phone calls. And sometimes, when we're in the Senate session, I'll get notes from constituents and I'll call them back personally. They're like, wait, what? This is really you? And then they'll quiz me or test me or like, well, what's your middle name or things of that nature. But to your point though, I think we have to give people hope.
Gotcha.
And Obama really capitalized on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so as bad as draining as it is, I'm hopeful that, we're going to have a good midterm season,
right?
But we can only do that if people come out and vote. And here's the thing that I tell people is that if we don't want Donald Trump to do shenanigans this election season,
right,
we must send him a loud and resounding message at the polls, at the ballot box, right? Because nothing else is working in his mind, right? We just saw Kristi Noem get fired. And I was like, okay, yay, accountability. And then we saw her get reassigned to a different position so she could, again, fail upwards.
Yeah.
So really nothing, the Congress certainly isn't doing anything. They've abdicated their duties. Victoria Spartz completely has abdicated her duties.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the only thing that we really need to do is the people need to speak up. And how we do that is we vote.
Right.
Yep.
And that's our voice.
And let's be real, I think the biggest thing that embarrasses him is losing elections.
Oh my God, yes.
So let's give him a loss.
Yeah. And he has like this weird, kind of thing about crowd sizes and things of that nature. So again, let's have a huge crowd.
Yes.
Send those folks to the ballot box and send them a strong message.
100%.
We're not going to live in this type of America anymore.
No.
We saw that in Texas. I moved here from Texas, and when I saw more Dems come out, I was like, oh, it's on, baby. Yeah. Let's go.
That one Texas seat was like, a 30 points.
Yes.
And that, flipped. And that gives me so much hope, right? Yes. That seat, there were seats down in, the South that kind of, got close and or flipped. We saw, 2 governors get elected in New Jersey and Virginia.
Yeah.
We are seeing the districts all across the nation. Our district is kind of R+9, which is it's going to be an uphill climb. However, it's totally doable.
Yeah.
We just got to have the right candidate who's going to, go out there and talk to people. And I love that retail politics. I love just, recently at a Martin Luther King Day event we were at in Anderson, and outside of the theater in 2 degrees, I stood outside and just shook hands with people.
Sweet.
And just said, hey, I'm running for Congress. If you're upset about, what you're seeing, give me a shot.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You've flipped a red seat before. That's
right.
This is nothing.
This is
Yes.
light work.
Yeah.
You know what to do. So let's extrapolate. You're out of campaign mode. JD has just won. What's going to change? What are you bringing to the 5th District that, what's going to be the difference they see day one?
Yeah, day one, for me, I'm going to serve on all my committees. I'm going to take those committee assignments and I'm going to take them seriously. I'm going to continue to do the things that I've done as a state senator because I feel like your past performance is a good indication of your future behavior, right? And so as a state senator, calling people back, emailing people back, doing those town halls, I would actually do coffee hours or coffee chats So I would work with a local coffee shop, and I would just say, hey, here's my credit card. For the next 2 hours, I'm buying everybody a cup of coffee, and they can come talk to me about whatever issue that they have. Just making yourself available so people can come talk to you. The other thing that I think I do really well is I listen to what's on the ground. So like there are different little local niche things that are happening. And so I want to keep a record of all of those things, and I want to start chipping away and going at it. I think, bringing back some dollars, some federal dollars to our local communities would be huge. And so that's one of the things I'm going to do on day one.
Awesome. Yeah. I do have to follow up, and, this isn't going to happen. But if you don't win, what do you expect to stay the same? What's not going to change, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to change. I don't consider myself a politician. I consider myself a public servant. And so I'm always going to try and find ways, to serve my community. That's just what I've known. It's just what I do. But we're going to work really hard to make that not happen.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Yes, that's Absolutely. The goal. Yeah.
Okay, finish this sentence.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm a bitch, but Indiana deserves
representation.
Yeah. You answered that earlier, and I was like, that's what he's going to say for that question. I mean, yeah, someone who's not going to want to quit.
That's
like
right.
every 5 days. I mean, like, do it, bitch.
Right.
Okay. That's it. All right. That was Indiana State Senator and congressional candidate J.D. Ford. We talked politics, shrimp cocktail, and the very real fights happening in Indiana right now. Whether you agree with him, disagree with him, or you're still deciding, at least now you can say he says it with his chest. This has been Sorry I'm a Bitch, the Joyful Revolution series.